9/11, 2001. Terrorists who call themselves warriors of God against the Crusaders of the West. Two religions that demand peace, yet wage war throughout history. Epochs of confrontation and collaboration. Peoples and powers who fight in the name of God, but who struggle for supremacy on earth. The Ottoman Empire, an Islamic great power. For centuries, a nightmare for the Europeans. A powerful army that goes from victory to victory. Muslim warriors that keep advancing towards the West. In 1683, a cry of terror resounds throughout Christendom. The Turks are at the gates of Vienna. Is the future of Europe at stake? Vienna, capital of the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, residence of the Habsburg emperors. In the summer of 1683, the city is under threat. For weeks, the Viennese have been holding out against a Turkish siege army. The defenders' commander, Count von Starnberg. He knows he has to hold the line at all cost. If Vienna falls, the gates to Christian Europe are open to a Muslim invasion. The relentless bombardment is taking its toll. The city walls are starting to crack, as is the morale of the defenders.
Exzellenz, wir haben sehr große Verluste.
The Viennese are taking heavy losses, with no relief in sight. They're urged to strengthen their resolve. The city is completely cut off from the outside world. If it wasn't for its strong fortifications, Vienna would have fallen long ago. The ambitious commander of the Turkish army, Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha. He wants to be immortalized through the conquest of Vienna.
Adjutant, mach Meldung.
Kara Mustafa's troops are confident of victory.
Wie ist die Lage für unsere Truppen an der Mauer?
The Turkish artillery is wearing down the Viennese defenses. Soon, the walls will be annihilated.
Nicht mehr lange, dann steht kein Stein mehr auf dem anderen.
Kara Mustafa has powerful cannons and 200,000 soldiers.
Vertraut auf die erhabene Fahne des Propheten.
The Turks also put their faith in the banners of the Prophet Muhammad. Allah will lead them to victory.
Lob sei Allah dem Allerhabenen!
Vienna must be conquered before the summer is over. Otherwise, the weather will force the Turks to retreat.
Mit Kanonen allein.
For now, the city walls remain intact. You need more than just cannons to capture the Golden Apple, as the Turks call Vienna. To take the city, Kara Mustafa orders the use of underground mines.
Ja, mein Pascha.
Ottoman miners dig tunnels towards the foundations of the Viennese walls. They intend to bring down the city's defenses with barrels of gunpowder. Massive explosions create the first breach in the walls.
Gib das Zeichen zum Angriff.
It's time to order the attack. In the nick of time, the defenders are able to protect the breach. If the Ottomans can take the gap in the wall, the city will fall. Every inch is fought over. No holds barred. The Janissaries, elite Turkish troops, are greatly feared. They were recruited as children. Born into Christian families in the Balkans, they were forced to convert to Islam. Now, they are the most loyal troops of the Turkish sultans. But even they are unable to break through the defenses. For nearly 8 weeks, the Viennese have withstood every attack. But they are running short of ammunition and food. They have suffered tremendous losses and are exhausted.
The situation inside the city wall was dire. Corpses littered the streets, there was nothing to eat. Needless to say, this was a very difficult situation for the Habsburgs and the entire army.
Vienna is lost unless a Christian alliance comes to its aid. Starhemberg puts his hopes in the emperor, the alliance, and in God. Surely their Christian brothers won't desert them. In 1683, 2 great powers clash in Vienna: the Habsburg dynasty of Holy Roman Emperors and the Ottomans, whose territories stretch across 3 continents. But who are these Muslim warriors who strike fear at the heart of Europe? The Ottomans are members of a Turkish tribe that advanced from Central Asia into Anatolia in the 13th century. It was here that these mounted nomads laid the foundation for their future empire through extreme violence. During their long journey to the west, the ancestors of the Ottomans had adopted the Islamic faith. But was Osman, the founder of the empire, really a warrior for the faith, or mujahid, as was later claimed?
The term jihad was often used, but something very different played a role as a motivating factor or as encouragement for war. The expansion of the Ottoman Empire itself was not achieved through a holy war. It was motivated by material interests.
Still, Islam would rule any territories the Ottomans could conquer. Step by step, they expanded their sphere of control and advanced into Europe. Since the mid-14th century, numerous territories in the Christian Balkans had come under Ottoman influence. Only one city remained out of reach: Constantinople, the metropolis on the Bosporus. For Muslims, a promised city. Muhammad himself had prophesied.
Constantinople will be conquered. Blessed be the commander, and blessed be his troops.
For more than 1,000 years, the emperors of the Byzantine Empire had resided on the Bosporus. The city was the center of Orthodox Christianity since late antiquity. The ruler in Constantinople considered himself emperor by the mercy of God and protector of the one true faith. Constantinople was famous for its holy relics, for exquisite works of art, and for glorious opulence. It was said that the Holy Spirit was revealed through the sheen of gold. The city's riches were envied by people far beyond its borders. The Church of Holy Wisdom, the Hagia Sophia, built in the 6th century, towered above Constantinople. Prior to St. Peter's in Rome, it was the largest church in Christendom, one of the wonders of the world. An ecstatic visitor wrote,
"Whenever anyone enters the church, they understand immediately that this magnificent work was not created by human hands, but by the very power of God."
Much of Constantinople was magnificent, including its powerful fortifications. In the middle of the 15th century, they protected the last bastion of Christianity within the Ottoman sphere of power. In 1453, there was a new threat. The young Sultan Mehmed II was out to conquer Constantinople. He desired the Golden Apple, symbol of power of the Byzantine emperors. Many sultans before him had the same dream.
His predecessors had already made great efforts to conquer Constantinople. Thanks to modern artillery, he now had the potential to breach the city walls.
Mehmed deployed the largest cannons in the world. They were forged by an armorer from Hungary, a Christian. Now they were in the service of the greatest Muslim power of the day, in a campaign that aimed to achieve victory for the one true faith. Mehmed declares the attack on the city a holy war.
"My highest ambition is to crush the non-believers."
On April 12, 1453, the Turkish cannons open fire. "They are pulverizing the walls," wrote a horrified defender.
For decades, the Ottomans had had the best artillery and ordnance in the world. The Ottoman artillery was far more decisive than the notion of jihad.
6 weeks later, the battle was won. From now on, the Ottomans controlled the fate of the city and that of its Christian inhabitants. Sultan Mehmed takes over the imperial city of the Christians. The Sultan's dream had come true. He went down in history as Mehmed the Conqueror. Mehmed allowed the city to be looted as reward for the warriors of Islam. They had fulfilled their duty in the Holy War, as demanded by the Quran. Muslim tradition had always required the faithful to engage in jihad, the struggle on the path of God. The term refers to both religious pursuits and to the armed defense of the faith. Until the last days and the end of the world, there will always be warriors fighting the jihad. Those who fight for Allah, whether they live or die in battle, will be rewarded in paradise. The Ottomans justified their expansion through the concept of jihad. Islamic law allows victorious soldiers to loot a conquered city if it had refused to surrender. The soldiers' first target, the churches of Constantinople, with their enormous wealth. It's no different to the Christian armies of the day. If a besieged city defended itself, its inhabitants risked vengeance. In the hours before the fall of the city, many people sought refuge in the church of the Hagia Sophia. They hoped they would be safe in this place of worship. They asked God for protection from the enemy. What happened next was recorded by several Christian chroniclers.
Nothing so horrible has ever happened before. Nothing so horrible will ever happen again.
The fall of Constantinople left a deep impression in the collective memory of Christian civilization.
Anyone who gets in their way is killed by the sword, men and women, regardless if they are young or old.
After taking heavy losses in battle, the Ottomans took revenge. For 3 days, the city was at the mercy of marauding troops. Eventually, Sultan Mehmed gave the order to stop the looting. He didn't want Constantinople to be destroyed or depopulated. It was to become the new capital city of the Ottoman Empire. In the Ottoman Empire, Greek and Armenian Christians were to have a rightful place next to the Muslims. According to legend, Mehmed ordered his troops to search for the fallen emperor among the dead. It's said that he was identified because of the golden eagles that adorned his shoes. Mehmed showed respect to the brave defenders. The dead Christians were given proper burials. In Mehmed's realm, all subjects will be allowed to coexist, regardless of their faith. Although Islam will dominate.
To demonstrate that this was now an Ottoman Islamic city, Mehmed II converted the main landmark of the Christian world, the Church of the Hagia Sophia, and used it as a mosque.
For over 500 years, the Golden Crescent has adorned the dome of the Hagia Sophia. It's the symbol of a historical watershed. For many years, it was the Ottoman Empire's most important mosque. Where Christians once turned towards the east for prayer, a niche now pointed the Muslim faithful towards Mecca. Since 1934, the Hagia Sophia has been a museum, but it remains the main landmark of Istanbul, the former Constantinople. Mehmed had picked the golden apple. The Turkish conquest of the city marked the onset of a new epoch.
It was undoubtedly the turning point that made the Ottomans the overlords of the Islamic world for centuries to come. It had fundamental implications.
After 1453, the Ottomans continued to expand, making inroads into Europe. They occupied most of the Balkans, as well as Hungary. Eventually, Islam's greatest power crossed the borders of the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation. It was a powerful opponent, although torn by internal strife. In the early 16th century, the Holy Roman Empire was shaken by religious conflict. In the city of Worms, a showdown was looming. One empire, one faith, one ruler. That was the vision of Emperor Charles V, a vision called into question by the teachings of Martin Luther. This rebel monk was gaining support because of his criticism of the Roman Catholic Church. Luther was ordered to withdraw his claims in the city of Worms. Luther was accused of heresy. He had questioned the judgments of the popes and the authority of the Church, thus undermining the unity of Christendom. But Luther had some powerful supporters.
Wenn ich nicht.
He tells the emperor that he refuses to renounce his teachings unless he can be convinced through the scripture and through proper reasoning.
Gott hilf mir. Amen.
Luther dared to stand up to the emperor and to the church. The Reformation had become unstoppable, especially as Charles V was busy defending the borders of the Holy Roman Empire against the Ottomans. His forces were tied down in the southeast.
One of Charles V's biggest problems was the threat by the Turks, by the Ottoman Empire. There had been constant clashes since 1520. It's a valid point. Without the Turks, there wouldn't have been the Reformation.
In 1529, the Ottomans dared to attack the metropolis of the Habsburgs for the first time. The conquest of Vienna, one of the main capitals of Christian Europe, would have had a huge symbolic significance. In many cities of the empire, church bells rang out on a daily basis to warn people of the Turkish threat. There were regular sermons against the Turks, the so-called Antichrist.
Welche kein Alter schonen und ohne Barmherzigkeit Jünglinge und Greise niedermetzeln.
Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent was singled out as the arch-enemy of the Christian faith. His troops launched the attack on Vienna in the autumn of 1529. It seemed to be a matter of time until the city fell into Ottoman hands. The people of Vienna prayed for a miracle, and their prayers seemed to be heard. There was snowfall at the beginning of October. The early advent of winter saved the city. Suleiman was forced to call off the siege.
When you read the Ottoman chronicles on Vienna in 1529, it sounds as though they had won a great victory. In reality, Suleiman retreated after 3 weeks.
But the Christian fear of the Turks remained. Catholics and Protestants were united in their denunciations of the Turkish peril. Their tracts against the Ottomans were widely distributed, thanks to the newly invented printing press. Real as well as alleged crimes were embellished in the so-called Turkish prints. Descriptions of acts of cruelty were selling like hotcakes. Even Martin Luther was railing against the perceived Antichrist. He described the Turks as the enemies of all Christians. They were servants of the devil, who was trying to topple the kingdom of Christ. Luther encouraged his fellow Germans to strike against the Turks without remorse.
The fear had some justification because of the Ottoman thrust to the west. People saw the Turks as the scourge of God, as a just punishment for their sins.
But despite their sworn enmity, the Habsburgs and the Ottomans still maintained diplomatic relations. In 1554, an imperial ambassador, Ogier de Busbecq, traveled to the court of Suleiman the Magnificent for peace talks.
We have been holding out against the Turks for many years. The emperor explained to me how they can be placated.
The diplomat entered a world that was far more splendid than anywhere in Europe. He was deeply impressed by the mosque of Suleiman, built by the Sultan to surpass even the Hagia But the Ottoman center of power was the Topkapi Palace. The magnificent and legendary court of the Sultan was admired and envied throughout Europe.
According to many contemporary observers, the period between 1450 and 1600, perhaps even 1650, was the golden age of the Ottoman Empire.
The Habsburg ambassador was only occasionally allowed to visit the Sultan. On his way to an audience at Suleiman's palace, Busbek caught a glimpse of the mysterious and carefully shielded court.
I was able to see the harem, the home of the Sultan and of his family. Ottoman women are known for their modesty, but they're still kept out of sight of foreign men.
Especially the wives of the Sultan. They were closely guarded by the eunuchs. The rulers wanted to ensure that only legitimate heirs were born. In the Western world, the concept of the harem allowed the imagination to run wild. It became synonymous with unrestrained sensuality and everything that was forbidden in Christian Europe. In reality, the harem was rather ordinary, but it could also be ruthless. There was intense rivalry among the Sultan's many sons. Only one of them would ascend to the throne. The Ottomans had a tragic tradition of fratricide. Entire generations of leaders were wiped out. Could fratricide be conciliated with Islam?
From the Islamic point of view, both legally and morally, fratricide cannot be justified. Murder is forbidden. The only time you might be able to make an exception would be the killing of a tyrant, when the killing serves the common good. But fratricide is essentially an act of murder and cannot be justified.
Ambassador Busbek used his time of waiting in Istanbul to study foreign customs.
The priests call out from the top of a specially built tower. They loathe physical impurity more than spiritual impurity, so they regularly visit the local baths, the hammam.
Constantinople's markets sold exotic goods from all over the world. The city's first coffee house opened in Busbek's lifetime. Before long, they were an integral part of the city. But there were also protests against the new trend.
The religious criticism was that coffee drinkers were consuming a substance that had been unknown to the Prophet, an illegal novelty.
Busbek also reported on cultural and technical achievements. The Ottomans continued in the tradition of the Arabic sciences, like medicine and astronomy. But they also took on board the new European knowledge, including the realization that the Earth is round and not flat. The discovery of two new continents by the Spanish and the Portuguese also got attention. Religious minorities weren't persecuted. Jews from all over Europe sought refuge within the Ottoman Empire. A synagogue in Istanbul commemorated their escape by sea. The pulpit resembles the bow of a ship.
You could say that the Ottomans were quite tolerant in their dealings with non-Muslims, at least for that time period. Tolerance, not in the modern sense of having equal rights, but in the sense that they were given legal protection, which was certainly not always the case in Europe in the 15th, 16th and 17th centuries.
gegeben war.
After difficult negotiations lasting several years, Busbek was finally able to sign a ceasefire with the Ottomans. Busbek sent the emperor's greetings and expressed his desire for peace. But for peace, the Sultan expected to receive tributes. Busbek conceded as a gesture of goodwill and for the common good. The Habsburg emperor would pay an annual tribute of 10,000 gold coins. There was also a note of warning for the emperor. Do not provoke the Sultan, the sleeping lion, as this would result in merciless warfare. Sultan Suleiman, whose territory stretched across 3 continents, had no intention of taking the ambassador of the infidels seriously. After lengthy negotiations, Busbek had concluded a ceasefire agreement between the Habsburgs and the Ottomans. His mission was accomplished. But Busbek's assessment is downbeat, writing that ultimately one side will prevail and the other will perish. For Busbek, it was a final farewell. After 8 years in the Ottoman Empire, the ambassador returned home. For the time being, the Turkish threat had been averted. But it was the different Christian denominations that would soon be at loggerheads again. In Catholic Vienna, there were plans to snuff out the Reformation. Emperor Ferdinand II intended to turn back the clock and defeat the Protestants within his empire. A dedicated Catholic, he wanted to restore the unity of the Church. But within the fragmented Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, the Protestants had become a force to be reckoned with. (1618) marked the beginning of the last and worst confessional war between the Christian powers. For 30 years, Central Europe was a battlefield. The war was about faith, power, and control of the continent. Sometimes alliances were made, irrespective of religious differences. The 30 Years' War had horrifying consequences for Europe. Entire regions were devastated and depopulated. Violence, disease, and famine resulted in the death of more than 1/3 of the population of the German-speaking world. In the end, there was no victor, but many victims. In the name of faith, a catastrophe had been unleashed. In the end, there was a consensus that religion should never again be the cause of war between Europeans. The 1648 Treaty of Westphalia ended the wars of confession within the Christian world. The price of peace, the lasting division of the Church, and the territorial fragmentation of the Holy Roman Empire. But only 1 generation later, the Ottoman Turks again mobilized against the weakened Holy Roman Empire. Because of its strategic position, was the gateway to Central Europe. If the city fell to the Ottomans, Europe would be open all the way to the River Rhine. The attackers decide to charge the city walls in an attempt to break through the Viennese line of defense. Both Christian and Muslim soldiers are convinced that God is on their side. It's their motivation as they enter battle. Starhemberg is forced to deploy all his forces to defend the city walls. Kara Mustafa is confident of victory.
Die Festung Wien ist sturmreif.
He is sure that Vienna, the Golden Apple, will fall within a day.
Der goldene Apfel. Morgen ist er unser. Morgen holen wir ihn uns.
The fortifications of Vienna had been repaired and reinforced after the siege of 1529. The walls are stronger, and they have been staggered and angled to withstand the artillery of an attacker. Vienna is protected by a clever system of walls, moats, and bastions. Constructed in accordance with strict geometrical rules, the star-shaped city walls has no blind spots. The defending troops can easily fire at the approaching attackers. There's only one way to overcome the defensive fortifications. The Ottomans have started to dig tunnels underneath the city walls. They intend to deposit barrels of gunpowder in underground chambers and blow them up. The Viennese are aware of the danger. They establish listening posts in the cellars near the city wall to discover where the tunnels are being dug. Working frantically, the defenders dig tunnels of their own to detect the enemy's gunpowder chambers. It's a race against time. Just in time, the Viennese prevent the Ottomans from igniting a huge mine. The city averts catastrophe. It's a close call.
Die Gefahr ist noch nicht gebannt. Wenn die Allianz heute nicht
Without help from the Christian alliance, Vienna will be lost. Starhemberg sends a messenger to the alliance's commander. It's a desperate and final appeal to Vienna's Christian allies.
It was a religious war, quite clearly. The Holy League was there to fight for the faith.
The Holy League is an alliance between the Habsburgs and rulers of the Holy Roman Empire, who were allied to Poland and Venice. But other Christian powers, including France, the Netherlands, and England, provide no assistance. The Viennese have one last hope. They've been promised help from a relief army of the alliance. But will it arrive in time? The messenger from Vienna reaches the allies.
Seid ihr der Herzog von Lothringen?
Ja, bitte, was gibt's denn?
Eure Exzellenz, ich habe eine dringende Nachricht für den
The Holy League has its headquarters on a hill near Vienna. They are the only ones who can save the city from the Turks. The alliance is led by the King of Poland, Jan Sobieski. In response to a request by the Pope, he's agreed to support the Habsburgs against the Ottoman threat. Sobieski understands the gravity of the situation. If the Turks take Vienna, they will push further into Europe. He orders to attack the Turks on the following day. What will be achieved in Vienna will benefit the whole of Christendom.
Gebt Wien das Zeichen.
The decisive battle is about to begin. It is billed as a fight between Christians and the Antichrist. When the Viennese see the signal fires, they believe it to be a sign of salvation.
Jungfrau Maria sei Dank.
They give thanks to the Virgin Mary and to the Emperor. During a special field service, the Christian Alliance prepares its troops for the decisive battle. You have been sanctified for a holy war. The Ottoman warriors also pray for God's help before going into battle. They too receive religious blessings. Both sides believe that God is on their side. Time is of the essence. Led by the King of Poland, the alliance attacks the Turkish positions on the Kahlenberg Hill outside Vienna in the morning of the 12th of September, 1683. It will go down in history as the Battle of Vienna. The Viennese are witnesses as the Polish cavalry surprises the siege army. The Turks don't expect an attack. Confident of victory, they told the emperor in Vienna that they would crush his country under their horseshoes.
Certainly, Kara Mustafa underestimated the strength of the European alliance, especially their unity and their determination to defend the city at all cost.
When the armored cavalry suddenly appears at the Ottoman camp, they meet with little resistance. Even the bodyguards of the Grand Vizier are surprised. They fight against the attackers, but can't avoid defeat.
Alles ist verloren, mein Pascha. Ihr müsst euer Leben vor dem
As all seems lost, Kara Mustafa seeks death on the battlefield. Whoever is martyred in a holy war gains entry into paradise. But without his leadership, the Turkish army will perish.
wird das ganze Heer zugrunde gehen. Lasst uns schnell von hier fliehen.
Ob ich vor Allah Gnade finden werde?
At the last possible moment, Kara Mustafa decides to flee. The Ottoman army barely avoids total annihilation. The Grand Vizier escapes with the banner of the Prophet. He will later be executed for losing the battle. From the point of view of the victors, Western civilization has triumphed over the usurpers from the Middle East. The defeat at Vienna is a turning point. The Turks lose Hungary. Gradually, they also lose ground in the Balkans. After 1683, the Ottoman Empire increasingly falls behind the Europeans.
The prevailing opinion is that after the 17th century, the Ottoman Empire entered a period of decline. In fact, what can be said is that ever since the late 17th century, the Europeans were on an equal footing with the Ottomans, their military and political opponents.
The discovery of America and the opening up of the sea routes to India signaled the beginning of a new era in Europe. The seafaring powers divided the world amongst themselves, founded colonies, and exploited them. The age of exploration and worldwide colonization happened without the participation of the Ottomans. Although they observed global developments, the world map drawn by Piri Reis in 1513 proves that the Ottomans were well aware of the Americas. But unlike Christian Europe, they failed to take advantage of their knowledge. After the invention of the printing press, Western civilization enters the age of reason. Europe's media revolution broadens people's horizons and paves the way for the triumph of modern science. Unlike the Ottomans, who cut themselves off from the outside world and focus on traditional values. Some historians blame Islam for this, as a force that hampered progress.
I don't know whether Islam really played a decisive role in the long decline of the Ottoman Empire, a process that spanned several centuries. There were many other factors too. For example, the undeniable arrogance of the Ottomans, their refusal to modernize, their technical incompetence, their belated attempt to industrialize, but also the widespread discontent of the population of this multi-ethnic empire.
During the next 250 years, the Ottomans relinquish most of their once powerful empire. In 1923, modern Turkey is created as a republic. Soon after, the metropolis on the Bosporus is renamed Istanbul. Under Kemal Atatürk, the country undergoes reforms in the European mold. There's also a break with religious tradition. Secularism and modernization are the order of the day. Turkey develops into one of the most progressive Islamic countries in the world, with a growing economy, and with an army that guarantees secular rule in the country.
The Turkish Republic, under the leadership of Kemal Atatürk, made a real effort to cut itself off from its Ottoman past and lead Turkey into the modern age. And it did so on the basis of European ideals.
Today, Turkey's Ottoman heritage is being reevaluated. There's a renaissance of Islam. So where does Turkey belong? Will it continue to veer towards Europe, or will it return to its Ottoman roots as the world's leading Islamic power? Perhaps the country's most promising future is as a bridge between East and the West.